People get a little overwhelmed or intimidated by the idea of making a major lifestyle change, and it is absolutely feasible to do this. No matter where you are in your life, there's always ways to, make your diet more sustainable, and there are different ways of doing that. So I recommend that people take it on as a very positive, fun journey and look at it as all of the new foods I get to try, or experimenting with new cuisine or new ingredient, and just you're literally learning a new language. So it's like, for instance, getting an ingredient, that would be like learning a few words, and then putting it together into a new recipe, and that would be a few sentences. And before you know it, you become fluent in eating health-promoting, a whole food plant-based diet. So staying positive and joyful and enjoying the process, sharing with like-minded people, because there's a lot of them, and they're growing. There's a lot more and more as time goes on. So finding like-minded individuals to have some support and making this a very positive process. Instead of thinking of what you're cutting out from your diet, think about what you're bringing in. I didn't know there were so many different types of lentils, or how many different types of rice. I mean, who knew black rice was so delicious, or red rice and wild rice? And there's so many different varieties of these incredible plant foods that you're more inclined to explore when you're trying to make these transitions. So pick, one small step at a time. It's your journey, and make it very positive, and you will be successful, because every bite matters, every meal matters as well. So the primary source of genetically modified soybeans, most of the soy that you find around the country and probably beyond do come from genetically modified crops. The way to avoid that is to choose organic. It cannot be labeled USDA organic if it has genetically modified crops in it. So that's one way, or if it says non-GMO. So that will be on the soy products that you buy at the store. It's harder to control when you're out and about. It'll have to say, it basically has to state that there are not GMOs in there. Otherwise, I would assume there is. I think it's about 90% of the soy on the market is genetically modified. So yeah, I recommend choosing the USDA organic or the non-GMO if you're gonna enjoy delicious, healthy, nutritious soy products. The corn as well, if you have the organic label on it, it cannot be genetically modified. So for corn, I recommend that. For soy, I recommend that. I don't recommend using canola oil because it's oil, but if you are, then yeah, make sure it's organic or non-GMO. So one of the topics that I came here to speak about was the confusion about nutrition, and how it is really the most complicated, complex science when you compare it to other sciences. And the reason for this is multivariable. There are a lot of different reasons why it's so confusing. There's a lot of different opinions, there's a lot of different research, it's hard to study all of that. So the best way to approach it is, to look for resources that are objective. You have to look at all of the resources and take all the information in, and then make decisions based on that. Of course, some intuition comes into play here, but the overall preponderance of data that we have shows that a whole food plant-based diet is optimal for health, and that you can get all of your nutrients, say for vitamin B12, from eating a whole food plant-based diet. And there's so many different ways to eat a plant-based diet that makes it accessible for everyone. So in terms of ease of use, everyone could find a way to incorporate more whole plant foods into their diet. And that just means crowding out the processed foods, the animal products, until you transition yourself to eating an exclusively whole food plant-based diet. And that is where you're gonna get all of your phytonutrients and your fiber and all of the components that protect you against disease and give you the best nutritional bang for your caloric buck. And likewise, it will also help you avoid the health damaging compounds, the things that we know promote disease, like saturated fat and cholesterol and heme iron and new 5GC and L-carnitine that converts into TMAO, and all of those compounds that we see that promote the disease process, inflammation and oxidation and all of that. So that's the wonderful benefit of eating a whole food plant-based diet. You could go raw, and you could eat a lot. I love raw foods. I think raw foods are really important because you get a lot of nutrients in raw foods that when you start cooking or processing them, you lose some of those nutrients. So I recommend consuming at least half your calories from raw foods, lots of fresh fruits and vegetables, and if you can sprout or get sprouted grains and legumes, those are wonderful, and nuts and seeds and all of that. But there's also some benefits to including some cooked foods in your diet. So for instance, if you cook whole grains grains. Grains are wonderful ways to substantiate a diet and help with satiety, help you live longer and better. There's wonderful nutrients and health profiles associated with whole grains. But also, certain nutrients are enhanced when they're cooked. For instance, the phytochemicals like lycopene and lutein, which are found in tomatoes. So when you cook tomatoes and make it into a beautiful sauce, you know, in the Mediterranean diet, which I talk about in the vegetarian diet, they have this sofrito, and it, you know, they would cook it all day, and there was a lot of effort put into this beautiful, delicious sauce. And those phytochemicals are enhanced and actually absorb better and help reduce the risk of prostate cancer and help improve eye health, just that one nutrient alone from being cooked. So there are benefits to eating raw food and there's benefits to eating cooked food. It's just a way of making it accessible for everyone, what works for you, and trying to incorporate both of those types of foods into your diet. One of the biggest myths is that there's nothing to eat on a plant-based diet and that you just sit there and munch on carrots and celery all day like a rabbit. But it's so not true. And I've seen myself and other people, it's like rediscovering food, because now you get to think outside the box and you get to explore fresh herbs and dried spices, and you can make all sorts of things. You can make something very bland turn into all sorts of different flavors, and you can mimic the profiles of all these different wonderful cultural varieties. You could visit every country in the world with different flavor combinations, and it's really exciting. And that's one of my favorite reasons, culinarily speaking, for a plant-based diet, is that it makes you think outside of the steak in the middle of the plate, the meat in the middle of the plate that you just throw on, you know, salt and pepper, and it was very boring. If you really kind of start eating a plant-based diet, you see how much more variety of flavor, of textures, of just everything you could do. You can make it much more exciting when you think beyond that standard American plate that we were raised with. So yeah, I love herbs and spices. I always consider myself having a black thumb because I'm not very good in the garden, but I have been able successfully to grow some herbs, and fresh herbs make everything taste better. Sometimes I take a bunch of fresh herbs and I just chop them all up, or I wash them, and then right before I eat them I chop them all up, and then I add them to salads. You could top them on soups, you could put them anywhere, and it gives you like that fresh sensation. Everything tastes fresh and delicious when you add fresh herbs. But you can cook them, you could do everything with them, and it's really fun to experiment with. My last book, The Vegetarian Diet, was basically, I talked about the reasons a Mediterranean diet have been so successful and is considered the gold standard in the research, and then all the discrepancies that you look at. And people think that the Mediterranean diet is so successful because of the olive oil, or because of the red wine, or because of the fish. Those are the biggest myths. So people think they could eat, you know, a big steak and they could just pour their olive oil and have a glass of wine and everything's gonna be okay. So I really wanted to find out, because I've been recommending a no or low oil. I recommend eliminating oil as much as possible from the diet for years. And so I really wanted to know, well, why is it still good in the Mediterranean diet, and why does that seem to be the superfood? So if you really dig in and you really look at it, it looks like perhaps the Mediterranean diet is successful in spite of, not because of, their large intake of olive oil. And it's interesting because I just came back from Italy and everything was doused in olive oil. Even my own cooking demo. It was like my cooking recipes from this book that have no oil, and I was adamantly like, no oil. They couldn't not put the woman that was helping me, the chef, she's Italian, so we had a translator, and she still put oil in my oil-free recipes because it's so part of the culture. And it's a very interesting concept to take that out. It's kind of heretical to take it out of the Mediterranean, the classic Mediterranean diet. But you know, in war-torn Crete, when this all began in the 50s, right after World War II, and this nation was impoverished, and these people they didn't have food. It was destroyed by World War II. And so they had olive trees, and they were able to save the olive trees and concentrate the olive trees into the olive oil. And these people needed more calories, and there were all these nutrition assessments done on them, and they needed more calories. But if you translate that to now, it doesn't translate so directly, because here we are in 2016, and of the United States are overweight or obese. 1/3 of the global population is overweight or obese, and we don't need more calories anymore. In fact, most people are trying to reduce calories. And a lot of people, my clients, come to me, they want to lose weight, they need to lose weight. That's the first thing I do. So even if you feel like you're on this perfect diet and you still have the oil in there, it's an easy way to save hundreds or thousands of calories a week. I mean, it's unbelievable that 1 cup of oil, any kind of oil, they're all the same, has 2,000 calories per cup. And if you think about how easy it is to drizzle on some dressing, half a cup maybe on your salad, and then you're sauteing, you know, or you're making your mirepoix to make your soup at night, and it just for dinner, and you have, you know, a little bit of oil, a little bit there, here and there, that adds up really quickly. And 2,000 calories is more calories than most people consume in a day. So if you really want to make the easiest cut of calories, just on a calorie basis alone, that is beneficial. So, you know, it's very easy when you're at home. It's very easy to saute with vegetable broth or water instead of oil, or vinegars, or just saute with something else, or to make a dressing. And I use white beans. You puree white beans and make these delicious, really thick and decadent dressings that I pour on everything. You can bake. I use sweet potato puree or pumpkin puree or applesauce, and you can replace that oil, and you're getting more fiber, you're adding back nutrients, and you're saving thousands of calories. It's so easy. It's when you go out and when you travel that it gets a little more complicated. It's very hard. I travel a lot, I eat out a lot, and you have to say it a million times, and it's very tricky. So, of course, we all need to cook more. That's part of the idea of why Mediterranean diet is so healthy too, that they cook most of their meals. And we all should do that, but it's not, you know, not always feasible to cook all of your meals. So when you can't, you know, you do your best, and it depends on how healthy you are, what your goals are, but optimally try to reduce your oil. And I think that the real benefits of a Mediterranean diet is that it was essentially a plant-based diet. It was primarily plants. Most of the calories came from plants and mostly from whole foods. And it was also lifestyle. There's a lot of exercise and movement and a social life where, you know, we sat down for dinner and had meals together and a sense of purpose. And if you look at the blue zones, incredible study, looking around the world at the longest lived populations, the most centenarians in these different cultures around the world, they all have in common a few things, one of which is a plant-based diet, another which is legumes. And there's all these different fluctuations. They have social support. There's a lot of things you see in common with the Mediterranean. Mediterranean diet is part of the blue zones as well. So there are a lot of reasons to minimize oil. We don't need it, and we're better off without it if you can. My favorite question, I think the reason I became a dietitian is because I love to know what people eat. I'm the person at the grocery store that's looking at everyone's carts because I'm fascinated by what people eat. And what I do with my clients, and not just for selfish purposes, but I have them fill out a food journal so I can kind of assess, you know, what does their overall diet look like? Because really you can't look at one person's one day and determine their whole health history and their whole dietary pattern. It's far more complex than that. We are creatures of habit, and we do tend to eat rotate between 1 and 2 different breakfasts, 3 to 4 different lunches, and 5 to 6 different dinners a week. We tend to really be creatures of habit. But it is fascinating to look at what people eat, and I love asking people what they eat. So what I eat, also, it varies a little bit, but I am a creature of habit just like everyone else. But I'm also a mom. I'm a working mom. I've got 2 little kids and a husband, all of which are very, very picky, and they love like the processed, like, you know, the good vegan junk food, and so I'm always like fighting the good fight to make it as whole as possible, and that's all I cook in the house, and that's all I have in the house. But so what I eat personally is not exactly what my whole family eats, because, you know, I want them all to eat like me, but, you know, a mom can only do what a mom can do. So I love to start my day. I was talking about this in the talk that I don't like sweet anymore. Things have gotten really sweet for me. I'm like a recovered sugar addict, and it naturally happened as I started eating a whole food plant-based diet, but even fruit has become too sweet for me. So in the morning, I actually like to have, as soon as I get hungry, I'll start with salad. I know it sounds bizarre, and if you told me this 15, 20 years ago that I'd be eating salad for breakfast, I think that was insane and bizarre, and it probably sounds bizarre to you, but I love salad. I'll do like leftover quinoa, or, so I basically start with, I eat the whole day a combination. I always have a big, huge salad in my fridge. I usually I go to this farmer's market on Saturday or Sunday, and I wash all my veggies and produce, and I separate it and dry it really well, and I keep it for the week. But I'll always make a huge salad. I like to have hummus in the fridge, because hummus should be a food group. And then I'll make a big, like 1 or 2 or 3 big meals 2 or 3 times a week. So I batch cook, and then I'll pick through it. So I'll make like a Tupperware for myself. I'll always have salad. I always have some kale or some leafy greens, and then I put on whatever I made the night before. So whether it's a stew or a casserole, and I like to experiment with that and try new recipes, but they're always like a legume-based dish. And I mix that together with my salad, and I always have an oil-free sauce or an oil-free dressing in the fridge that I pour on top, and I will eat that throughout the day. So right now I'm big into jalapenos, and I went through a sauerkraut phase, so I'll put that in there too. But I really love this food, and I really do experiment with the big recipes that I make. And my kids are learning, and they're learning how to enjoy these whole intact foods. I cook with no oil. And I prepare, I always, emphasize the vegetables, of course. Let thy greens be thy medicine and thy medicine be thy greens. But my food is really, it's a lot of salad, a lot of legumes and grains. And right now I'm big on quinoa, but I've been experimenting with red rice and black rice and wild rice, and definitely a lot of lentils and beans. I haven't had an animal product, I think intentionally. I think once I accidentally had a bite of something, a cheese, like a few years ago. But it's been at least 11 years now. I haven't had animal products at all. And for the record, so it's been at least a decade that I've been completely animal product free, and I've never been stronger. I can do more at the gym. Like the guys all stop and go, whoa, look at what I'm doing. I do my tricep dips, I do like 100 tricep dips, not in a row, but I do my push-ups and pull-ups and all that. And I've never been stronger. I've never felt better. I got rid of completely a lifelong struggle of horrific gastrointestinal issues and chronic sinusitis, sinus infections and allergies. And like I was telling before, I was always had tissues in my sleeves and my pillows. I was always blowing my nose, always on Benadryl or like what's it called, like a Sudafed type of thing, because I couldn't breathe through my nose. And when I changed to a plant-based diet, all of that gone. All of that gone. And I speak for myself, but I've also personally witnessed this with hundreds, if not probably thousands of people at this point after doing this for 20 plus years. And it's extraordinary what eliminating animal products and incorporating these whole plant foods have done for me and clients and students and audience members. It's just the most amazing thing I've ever seen and experienced in my life. Transitioning to a plant-based diet is very personal. The research seems to suggest that transitioning slower is more sustainable for most people. And I've seen so anecdotally speaking from my clients, I have seen two types of personalities. There's the type of person that hears this information and dives in cold tofu, that's it, they're doing it 100%, no going back, and they're successful because they've seen the information. And once you know, you can't unknow. But there are people that need to take it one step at a time, and that's what happened with me. I knew it, I tried going cold tofu, and I had to wait because of my intervention, everything with my family, and just being afraid and not having the information. So I took it one step at a time. I wish I did this sooner. I wish I did this from day one. I wish I jumped in and never knew what animal products were like. My kids joke about it. My son is like, I've only had animal products twice in my life, and it was on accident. I've only had meat twice in my life. Once he had a hot dog at camp because he thought it was a tofu dog, and one time he had a bite of his friend's turkey sandwich, and he's very proud of that. And it's kind of cool. And I wish I had that story too. But so it depends on your personality. Do you need to take it slow? Is it overwhelming? Are you afraid that you're giving up stuff? And so then in that case, I would suggest tapering it in and really going by the crowding out effect. Bring in those delicious foods. Try those new recipes. Find the stuff you love to eat. Like, you have to love to eat this stuff. You have to enjoy food. Otherwise, it's not going to be sustainable. So, and it is. It can absolutely be delicious. I see myself as a foodie. I've grown up around food, and I love to eat. I love to eat more now than I ever did before because there's so much variety. So one step at a time, crowd it out. Or try going in if you really feel like, no, I'm done, I'm ready. You have to know, and I think everyone knows themselves, and you know what will work best for you. Suggestions on munching is a fun question. So like I said, what I do, here's an example, one way of handling it, is like I said, I have this big Tupperware full of what I'm gonna eat for the day, and I pick on it throughout the day. When I'm hungry, I eat some. And then when I feel good, I stop and put away and bring it back again when I'm hungry again. So you could eat the same foods in smaller portions throughout the day. So, or if you're looking for a specific like textural thing, a lot of people are looking for crunchy. Crunchy, you can get some crudité and use a hummus, and you get your vegetables, but the hummus will make it really delicious and even more exciting. Or if you're looking for crunchy, you can get a whole grain cracker. I love those raw crackers that are sprouted grains, and they're delicious and they're hearty and they really satisfy that crunch because they're really crunchy. I always carry crackers with me. gluten-free crackers because I happen to be allergic to gluten. Or you can do, let's say you're looking for the sweet factor. Of course, I'm going to say fruit. Fruit is always fabulous, but there's all sorts of other sweet treats you could do. You could make a whole food plant-based bar by just blending together, processing together some nuts, seeds, and dried fruit. Try to get the dried fruit without the sugar and the oil. Other sweet things. You know, if you have a high-powered blender, even a regular blender usually works, and you use like frozen banana, or frozen fruit, banana makes it really creamy, and you blend it together, you can get a delicious ice cream. And you could do like a frozen banana with some cacao powder, some carob powder, and make a really decadent treat out of it. So you can be really creative with some frozen fruit in a blender, and surprisingly. So let's say you're craving something, what else do people crave? Crunchy, sweet. You know, really the thing that happens when you eat a whole food plant-based diet is cravings for things go away, and you really just want something healthy and wholesome and delicious, and then your options seem to be limitless. So it depends on, you know, where you are and what you tend to eat. I feel like a baked potato or a baked sweet potato is really satisfying if you want something sweet. Or if you like nuts, you know, nuts and trail mix. Like for kids especially, you could make a do-it-yourself trail mix at home. So I get my kids' favorite nuts and seeds and some dried fruits, and I let them mix and match and put it in their baggie, or we pick out different varieties of trail mixes. And of course this works for adults as well, but it's fun to get kids to make their own. And yeah, nuts and seeds are wonderful snacks. But you know, if you have that tendency to just overeat on nuts, which a lot of people do, because if you think about it in nature, you know, a nut comes packaged very tightly, and it's very hard to get to the meat of that nut. And so you have to work really hard to get to it. But now we're literally handed bags of nuts that are already pre-shelled for you, and it's very easy to overeat. So there's an abundance of evidence showing the health advantages of including nuts in the diet, including decreased risk for type 2 diabetes, decreased risk for obesity, decreased risk for cardiovascular disease, and that is with the majority of the research shows that 1 to 2 ounces or 30 to 60 grams a day as a good dose. So if you're not going to overeat them, then they're wonderful nutrition nuggets to include as a snack. One of the reasons I recommend avoiding cheese is just the sheer addictive element of it. And it's been shown that it has the casein, which is a primary protein found in dairy, promotes an opioid effect. It turns into this casomorphine in the brain. So your body recognizes it, your brain recognizes it as something we want more of. And it's made intentionally for like a baby's milk. So when a mom is lactating their infant, you want the infant to want to drink because it needs to consume enough calories to grow. And so it's made by nature for a good reason, to make the baby want to have more. But it doesn't serve us later in life when we're trying to not consume these products. And there's all these other various reasons to avoid dairy, you know, the IGF-1 and the saturated fat and the cholesterol and all these different components that you find in cheese. But the fact that it's so addictive makes it so difficult for so many people. In fact, it's the #1 source of saturated fat in the American diet. So Dr. Neil Barnard has a book coming out about this. I can't wait, I think it's next year, but and he talks a lot about breaking the cheese addiction. And it really does, it's amazing. And I told the story in my talk, but I'll share it here too. I was totally a cheese addict. I was raised on cheese and I would eat it. I loved it. It's so like you're used to it, and it's put in everything, especially nowadays. And I remember when I was finally trying to make this transition to a plant-based diet, and so I bought soy cheese. And I was all proud of myself, and I was eating my soy cheese, and every day I was like, gosh, I want just a little bit more. And I would make my knife cut a little bit bigger, one more slice, and I couldn't get enough of this soy cheese. And I was like, gosh, this is so good. I'm so excited. I found a healthier version of this. Until I finally decided to read the label and realize that there was casein in there. So it's really like my own built-in placebo-controlled effect, because I didn't know that there was casein in there. I didn't read that. This is before I was a dietitian. And I was just as addicted to it. And even though it was soy cheese, it still had the casein, so it wasn't dairy-free cheese. So, and you see this, like, people can't give up their cheese. But I have to say that if you're transitioning, there are some wonderful plant-based options out there. Now, these are not foods that you should make your lifetime health food, but there are ways to transition out and get that casein out of your system. So after I transitioned out, and it had been a while, I was at a market and I was trying this little tofu sampler sushi thing, and I had a bite of it and I was like, ooh, this is really good. So I grabbed another one from the other side of it and I put it in my mouth, and it wasn't tofu, it was this slimy, disgusting, horrible thing that I realized was cheese. So they had 2 different types, and I didn't even know but my whole palate had completely transformed, and it was unpalatable because I got that addictive pattern out of my system. I retrained or recalibrated my taste buds. So I know exactly that it can happen, and I've seen it with a lot of people. It's just getting it out of your system and focusing it. So using those plant-based cheeses that are available now, there's some delicious plant-based versions made out of nuts and stuff like that that are now becoming increasingly accessible, and they're great. Like, I bring those to parties, I bring them to, you know, holiday parties, because people can't believe, oh, that's vegan, that's not animal products. And I think it's a wonderful transition food, and it's a wonderful treat food. So that's a good way to transition as well. But just to get that out of your palate and out of your brain, and so you stop that addictive cycle, it will be beneficial in the long run, and you won't miss it. You really won't. The idea that you have to be perfect is, first of all, really difficult. 2, I don't think it's possible. And 3, I don't think that's gonna help you meet your goals. I don't think anyone is perfect. I don't think anyone eats the perfect diet. I don't think it's even possible. I don't think there's a such thing as perfect. And I always try to say that perfection is the enemy of the good. And every step matters. And to go and on this journey means that you have to let yourself be okay with imperfection. And no one's gonna be, you know, the plant-based police saying, oh my gosh, I can't believe you had that, or I can't believe you didn't have this. Because it really is the preponderance of your diet. You have to look at the dietary pattern. And if you are striving for perfection, you're gonna beat yourself up, you're gonna go backwards, it's not successful or sustainable in the long run. So you have to let yourself be a little bit, and let yourself travel this journey at your pace. It took me a long time to get to where I feel very confident with this, very comfortable with this, and where it's just become second nature. But it took me a long time. I kept learning, I kept studying, I keep reading. Every day I'm reading about this information. I find it fascinating, but I've also seen what it does for me. I've seen what it does for other people, but it doesn't, even the people that have the benefits aren't perfect. No one is eating the perfect sterile diet 100%, you know, raw and sprouted and, you know, no coffee, no alcohol, not everyone can do that. And that's okay. And so the most important message you can take from this is that everything matters, and it's the whole rather than every single detail that matters the most. So don't beat yourself up, have fun with it, make it very positive, and see how, you know, how many plant-based meals you can have in a week, and how many new ingredients you can discover in a week, and how many new recipes you can fall in love with and want to explore and take to different levels and go crazy with in the kitchen. But take it one meal at a time, and do it with love for yourself. Have compassion for yourself. It's really, really important. Besides writing books, my day job is as a dietitian. I see clients. I work with people all over the world through Skype, FaceTime, phone, Google Hangout, however, even via email. And I work with different populations. I work with people that are trying to change over to a plant-based diet. I work with people that want to lose weight. I work with people that have serious chronic diseases. I work with people that just got a new diagnosis and they want to nip it in the bud. I work with all sorts of different people. I work with people that read the information like I did, you know, and find out about the ecological and the animal cruelty reasons that people follow a plant-based diet, but they want to do it healthfully. And so they come to me, how do I make sure I'm getting all of my nutrition? So that's my day job, and I love that. I love working one-on-one with people. I love talking to audiences. I love talking. I do videos. I do TV. I have a TV series called What Would Julieanna Do? I'm not sure if it's still airing. At last I heard it was still airing on Z Living. A lot of it was online as well. And, you know, my goal is just to get as many people to understand how easy this is and make it really accessible for people, because when I was trying to do this as a teenager and there was no internet or social media, dating myself again, but I didn't know what to do, and I knew I didn't want to take part in animal agriculture, but I didn't know what that meant. So I feel like I call myself a nutrition myth debunker, and I love getting to the bottom of all of this. But I write a lot because I just like to hit every avenue of communication as possible. I have a column in Veg News Magazine, my nutrition column. I'm working on some organizations to get this in an international level. I started something called Veg Retreats. We're starting in June, where we're going to go to Italy and do a health retreat in the southern Italy. So I'm getting into more travel stuff, and I'm doing a vegan cruise in the fjords next September. So I'm kind of just really loving teaching people how to eat a healthy, whole food, plant-based diet and all of the benefits and how to actually do it on a day-to-day basis. You could find me on my website at plantbaseddietitian.com. And I've just updated. In fact, I'm still waiting for all my photos to load, but I finally renovated my site. So plantbaseddietitian.com is my home base, and you can find out all about my services and my books on there. But I love social media. I've become such a fiend on social media because what a powerful way to reach a lot of people in a really fun and effective way. So you can find me on Facebook as Plant-Based Dietitian. That's my page, my fan page, Plant-Based Dietitian. And on Twitter as Plant Dietitian. And I'm everywhere either as Plant-Based Dietitian, Plant Dietitian, or my name, Julieanna Hever. So the biggest challenge of my entire life as a human, as a dietitian, as a vegan, as everything, is trying to get my children to eat healthy plant-based diets. And I studied this in grad school, and I thought, oh, this is gonna be a walk in the park. All I have to do is role model it and only have the healthy foods available, and that's just all I can do. It's all gonna be like that. But real life sets in, and you're like, oh my gosh, it's not so easy. And from day one, from nursery school and kindergarten and everywhere the kids go, and my kids are still young, but I've experienced this like massively, sports events and practices. Your kids are given opportunities to eat junk food everywhere, all the time. When I was a kid, it was a special treat. We would have like a holiday or a birthday, and you'd have birthday cake. It is like every day is a special treat now, and it doesn't even mean anything to say special treat anymore. So it's become quite a phenomenon. I don't want my kids to have issues with food. I grew up as an actress and a dancer, and I was always told to lose weight, and I, was obsessed with my weight growing up, and still it's an issue for me, and I didn't want that to happen to my kids. So how do you approach this, right? How do you do this? And I'm still learning. I think this is an evolving science, not really science, it's an art, and every kid is different, but I'm doing my best. So I want people, other moms out there, other dads out there to know that, you do your best. You role model. My kids see me eat salad for breakfast. They see me eating, they joke that all I eat is kale and hummus. And so role modeling, they say, the research shows over the long term is gonna be the most effective. You have those foods available at the house. I've been at war with my wonderful husband about having sugary foods in the house because he still loves that stuff too. So it becomes a battle when two parents aren't on the same page, and I've dealt with that since we've had kids. And so it's a journey, and this is the biggest challenge of my life. So finding kid accessible foods, exposing them to, taking them to the farmer's market, growing your own food, teaching them how to grow food and then how to use it in the kitchen, getting them excited to be in the kitchen and how to cook. Like my son was so resistant to getting into the kitchen until recently. He's scared to turn the flame on the stove now. So I'm teaching him how to turn the flame on because he never learned. He didn't want to. And so involving your children, I realized is so important. I always heard that, but my kids are resistant. So nothing in life is as it seems it's supposed to be. There's always, built-in challenges. But exposing them to that, a lot of kids are really interested in cooking, and there's some great books. Ruby Roth made this great new cookbook for raising kids vegan, and they could actually go and make these very simple recipes. And, just having them, making taco bars or salad bars or things where they do it yourself, or pizza bars where they get to pick their ingredients seems to be very effective for children. And teaching them at their level. So I take my kids to farms, to rescue farms, like farm sanctuary, animal sanctuaries, that was the term I was looking for, and have them pet the animals and see the animals because we all love animals. We have a dog that is a family member, so getting that side of it and just teaching them and sharing this information with them. And my kids have become little spokespeople, and they go out there and they're teaching their teachers and their friends and their people that they come across, our family members, about why a plant-based diet is so wonderful, and they're learning. So as hard as it is and it's getting progressively easier as the years go on, and I feel like I just want all the parents to have hope that the standard American diet is really not ideal, and if you're giving your child the opportunity to see how plant foods are not only more sustainable for the planet, cruelty-free, but also health promoting, and you're showing them all the avenues with that and how to do it, ultimately they're going to have to make their decision, but that's a lot of knowledge that I wish I was given child, and I think it's really empowering to share that information with children, and they will evolve along with you, as children will do. Oh, how do you make pizza without cheese? Good question. Well, you don't need cheese to make a pizza, believe it or not. But you can, like I said, there are all those transition delicious plant-based cheeses. If you don't know about Miyoko's artisan vegan cheeses, here's a shameless plug, and I don't get paid for anything. I think her cheeses are amazing. But you can totally do them cheeseless. So one of my dear friends, and she became my dear friend because I stalked her because she was so talented, is Drina Burton. She's written 5 now vegan cookbook. She's like a pioneer in the vegan recipe development world, and she's a mom of 3 girls that have been vegan from birth too, and she has a lot of creative ideas. So one of the things she does is uses hummus. So she'll do like tortilla pizzas with hummus instead of cheese, and it cooks up, it has a really nice texture. You can make a plant-based cheese. A cheese I use is a cheese sauce that I put on everything. In my vegetarian diet book, actually, it's a butternut sauce, butternut squash cheese sauce, and it's spicy and it's smoky and it's, oh, I mean, like I eat it by the spoonful, and you could pour that on a crust, and then you add the marinara, and then you add vegetables. You could do a completely cheeseless pizza, and you could go crazy with how delicious they could be. You know, add some avocado, you could add a few nuts and seeds, you could add herbs and spices, you know, or add some leafy greens, lots of tomatoes, lots of salt. You could get as creative with pizza as with anything, because you're basically putting something on bread, or even a tortilla, or a pita bread, or when I was a kid I used to have English muffins, or during Passover, if you're Jewish, you can make matzah pizza. There's so many ways to make a pizza. It's really like, what is pizza? It's whatever you make of it. You make it just whole food and delicious, and get creative, and it's a fun thing to do with kids too, and it's fun for adults because we like to make our own food and experiment. And yeah, you go make the most creative pizza and share your recipes because they're fun.